Hello and welcome to Missing BTS Hours. I'm Cindy, a longtime ARMY, and in this podcast, I am discussing BTS under the context of their hiatus and ARMY's relationship to them during this time of scandals, of enlistment, and generally the lack of live content together as a group. It will be also lots of reminiscing and keeping up to date with their various activities, both online and off. This podcast is for you, ARMY. Let's get started. Everyone, bonus episode. This was not originally planned at all. I went to see RM's newest documentary, Right Person, Wrong Place. And it's specifically, highlighting and just following the journey of RM and his team creating the album. The album's name obviously being The Other Side, so Right Place, Wrong Person. And I felt very inspired to kind of give you my feedback on it, my thoughts on it. So essentially, I think there's three specific points in which I want to kind of discuss the documentary because I feel like I can honestly yap about every single part of it because there was just so many cute little gems and bits of it where I felt like he genuinely was able to articulate authenticity to us. RM has specific qualities of his nature outside of being an artist that really showed up there. So that's the second thing. And then the third thing would just be the general aesthetic of the documentary and how visually appealing it was to me. Let's get into it. Number one, we're talking about authenticity here. The documentary is certainly portraying a specific aspect of RM, and it's his desire to kind of break out of the public persona of being RM K-pop leader and just being himself as RM the artist as well as Kim Namjoon the person. And this talks a lot about, private versus public personas of artists, but specifically of him and how long he's been in BTS for more than 10 years, how he's never been able to actually have a space to show any type of side of him that wasn't RM K-pop idol at all. So when he mentioned the scary aspect and the scary world of creating music alone under a different context and such a scary context of actually trying to reveal who you are as a person and trying to portray that in music, it's certainly overwhelming and scary. And this documentary really does show some examples in which either himself or his team talk about that scary feeling of trying to portray these things. Very commendable, amazing stuff. And it made me feel very connected to him and almost relating to him because there's always some type of scary feeling when it comes to trying to articulate yourself, the need to want to express yourself as who you are and how scary that type of feeling and jump it could be. So that was one thing. And I love how the documentary just makes right place, wrong person to be perceived as this artwork that's it's insanely human. It's a soundtrack for, honestly, life. The many events that come with life. So happiness, love, anger, confusion. There's so many little places in which each song kind of dedicates itself to. There's one specific feeling for each specific kind of song. And RM made that very intentional when he was creating it. That was present in the documentary. I think if you have to give Right Place, Wrong Person another listen and think about how each one has a central theme. And I love all of them. Personally, I've been really into Heaven. It's that specific little bridge of in between these very intense songs. And I love it. So please take that one too. And talking a little bit more about Right Place, Wrong Person, the album has an entire team behind it, not just himself, RM, but calls him his Team RM. And it's very cute and very endearing, but Team RM has this willingness really to kind of go on a strange kind of journey with him. And through all these different shoots and music productions, it's the fact that they're willing to kind of appease his vision to share his most authentic self that I find so endearing, so authentic, and very, very beautiful because there's only a very few people in this world that could really just kind of aid a Virgo in their vision of something. And it's not to stereotype Virgos in general, but it's kind of crazy when you have so many thoughts in your head and you're trying to produce some type of artwork or content that you want it to speak to people. And Virgo's innate nature of being perfectionist and just getting too stuck in the head about these things, it really does show in this documentary, and I kind of connected the dots there. So it wasn't intentional, but that was me just saying that RM is a very much a Virgo man. So number two, my point being that RM RM's qualities as a human person really shows through. So we have a huge sense of clumsiness, and this shows a lot in the London shoot with photographer Rosie Marks. And they fly to London, they do the shoot in some very big public places in the city, and you can just see him kind of feel awkward over the fact that like he's not in a closed set, which I'm pretty sure he's mostly used to. Public set that's not like closed, and he has to do lip sync these things in front of a camera, and people are gonna look at him, but they don't recognize him, which is a crazy thing to me. I love how his camera person and his producer kind of just like egg people on their way, that while RM is trying to like, you know, lip sync and like do his thing. And it's really funny how like that must be such a like abnormal thing for him, and yet he went through that, and that was really awesome. It was really funny too. So yeah. Oh, specifically too, in this London shoot, there was also the fact that like he had to do that wedding photo shoot. So he's in like this wedding party, and it's near the water, it's very muddy. The documentary kind of shows the world outside of those like concept pictures that we've seen before, and essentially just shows us that like there was like many people watching them. The crazy part was like they did not clock RM within the wedding party because he was like kind of like dressed to fit everyone. He wasn't the star in those concept photos if you've seen them already. It just looks like a random person's like wedding pictures, and like a random couple's wedding pictures. It's kind of crazy to see that like these people were genuinely interested in like the like whole like thing in front of them of this wedding photo shoot, but they had no clue that RM, international K-pop leader, was in that. They probably just thought it was just a very heavily produced type of wedding photo shoot. So that was hilarious. And then a little bit more about speaking about his authenticity and the fact that he's very much a Virgo and the sense of perfectionism. He's very moody in this documentary. So that just kind of shows a little bit more how authentic he is as a person. He mentions in the documentary how, like in front of the camera, that he hates work, yet he loves it at the same time. He loves people, but needs time alone extensively, and like all these like polar opposites. He talks about them in a way where a duality here. He's like, I love it and I hate it at the same time. I'm mad, but I'm also very happy. And the way that he says it obviously has very beautiful touch of humor, but it's so authentic. And honestly, he's just like me for real. I also hate work in general, like my schoolwork, and yet I love it at the same time. And I find myself kind of like wanting to produce like content, and I related to that super hard. Again, talking about the fact that he's such a perfectionist, he's always trying to find balance, but it's still a chaotic type of process. He mentions this in the documentary when he's sitting down in front of the camera to discuss like the nuances and the processes of trying to get this artwork to take shape. That balance is key. Yet we see him so authentic and moody all the time, and like very in this realm of chaotic. That must have been hard to do, but hey, work is work, and he found himself to be still thriving in that, which is amazing. And it just shows that he was always meant to be in the place that he is right now, doing music, loving music, creating it. 10 out of 10. So just an overarching thing where he finds beauty, and Team RM as well, with the whole vision and the concept photos behind the album. They are finding beauty in the mundane. They're shooting music videos in very public places, and it's such a normal type of setting that it's absolutely abnormal compared to the glamour behind like K-pop and K-pop standards of music videos and photo shoots. So RM's album is such an anomaly, and we have to kind of like shout that out too. It's strange, yeah. Here we are. Before we get into the last point of my thoughts on RM's newest documentary, this is music recommendation while you wait for BTS. So, a song called She from Japanese rock band Indigo La End. And I recommend this one because it's melancholy central. It totally reminds me of American rock math music. If you know and if you're familiar with that genre, it's super complex. It has lots of climbs and very atypical type of riffs that are still super melodic. I'm just really impressed by Indigo La End's musicianship that involves like sadness and like bittersweetness in like the guitar and the melodies. So please check that out. And honestly, it reminds me of this documentary. This song feels like RM to me. So RM, this one's for you too, bud. All right, so now we're heading to the last point of the documentary here. We have the aesthetic of the documentary. Obviously, it's complementary to the album. Like the album has very specific like photo shoots that make RM intentionally not the star of the shoot and makes him as a side character within these very obvious life events like a party, the wedding photos, playing in a playground, being outside in a public space, just very neutral clothing. You see the behind the scenes of those specific shoots, and it still caters to that type of aesthetic and has very beautiful neutral colors of like green, gray, mustard, blues, and whites and browns. We also see him very much intact with nature and all that green stuff. And there was a place where he says that he only had a real vacation for the first time in the year. It felt very sad to hear that he must be very much a hard worker to not have some type of break throughout the years. The fact that he had that little moment where him and his producers and his team went outside in the outskirts of Seoul, I can imagine, like ate, played, and went swimming, were on a boat. It's very interesting, and the aesthetic of the documentary is beautiful. So those are my 3 specific thoughts relating to RM's Right Person, Wrong Place documentary, the authenticity of it all, of him trying to express different personas, and the fact that he's been needing to find an outlet to really express who he was as a person outside of K-pop, outside of BTS. The second one was obviously we're touching base on like RM's qualities as a person, how you can really see that clumsiness in him, his moody self throughout it all, and his sense of perfectionism that like he's such a Virgo, and his perfectionism. So third and last point was just the beautiful aesthetic of the documentary. I hope you enjoyed this episode, a very bonus episode. We'll come back next week and have episode 3 and talk a little bit with a specific special guest. I hope you enjoy that. I'll see you soon. Bye! Thank you so much for joining us on Missing BTS Hours. Again, I'm Cindy, and I really hope you enjoyed listening. I always place the things that we talk about in the show notes, so check that out. And also subscribe to Missing BTS Hours to stay with us for each new episode. I also have an Instagram page at Missing BTS Hours, and we'll be posting updates and reminders of new episode launches, so also check that out. We will see you soon. Thanks!